The film Hamnet isn't about William Shakespeare. It's about his wife, Agnes. And through her eyes, the film becomes something far more powerful, a mediation on how human beings across centuries process grief through art. Hi, I'm Greg. I'm a cultural historian and actor, and in this video, I want to look at what Hamnet gets right, not about dates and documents, but about the emotional reality of losing someone and how that pain finds its way into stories. By the end, I hope you'll see that behind a great work of art is a human being trying to survive something that could have broken them. And maybe you'll recognize something of your own story too. So, what is Hamnet? Well, the 2025 closed WoW film Hamnet is adapted from Maggie O'Farrell's 2020 novel of the same name. It's a fictionalized account based on historic facts and set in Stratford-upon-Avon in the 1590s during an outbreak of the plague. But instead of following William Shakespeare's rise to fame, the story centers on his wife, Agnes, the woman history usually calls Anne Hathaway, and on the family, including the children, Susanna, and the twins, Judith and Hamnet. We're not watching the birth of a dramatic genius career. We're watching a family's world rise and collapse. And the choice to keep the camera on Agnes rather than William, well, that's what allows the film to become a study of grief rather than a traditional biopic. The film doesn't claim to reconstruct Shakespeare's private diary, which, as far as we know, doesn't exist. Instead, it invites us into an emotional truth we can recognize, even if the exact details are imagined. What strikes me first is, as an actor, is how quiet this grief is. There's no big Oscar-clipped monologue. Instead, we see grief in the way Agnes moves through the house following Hamnet's death. She pauses at a doorway and doesn't enter. She straightens a blanket that will never be slept under again. Her hands linger on his clothes a little too long. These are the gestures of someone whose body remembers a child that the world no longer sees. As a historian, I recognize echoes of early modern mourning practices, the focus on the home, objects, ritual. But what moves me most is that none of this feels like a museum exhibit. Rather, it feels like how people today grieve. In the kitchen, the bedroom, those ordinary places that are suddenly unbearable. For me, one of the most powerful moments is when Agnes sits alone in Hamnet's room. There's almost no dialogue, just her breathing, the creak of floorboards, and light falling across an empty bed. The film isn't giving us information here. It's giving us a feeling, the way time warps and stretches when someone you love is gone. And that brings us to a harder question, which is, if this is a film about imagining grief, what do we actually know about Shakespeare's loss? Historically, we know very little about Shakespeare's life, and even less about Hamnet's death. The parish register for Stratford-upon-Avon records a simple fact. Hamnet, son of William Shakespeare, was buried in August 1596. No cause of death, no description of a funeral, no letters of condolence. And that's not unusual for the time. But for a figure we talk about endlessly, Shakespeare's private life is mostly silence. Now, but we can sketch an outline. By 1596, Shakespeare was spending much of his time in London. His family, however, remained in Stratford. His only son died. The playwright, who will later give us some of the richest mediations on death and memory in the English language, leaves us no explicit record of his own mourning. Scholars like Stephen Greenblatt have noticed an intriguing details. Many names in Elizabethan England were essentially interchangeable, so Hamlet, Hamnet, different spellings of the same name. Also, about 8 years after his son's death, Shakespeare's play, Hamlet, is produced for the first time. This play, which is obsessed with fathers and sons, ghosts and memories, with the question of how the dead live on in the minds of the living. We can't prove a direct line from Hamnet's grave to Hamlet's stage, but we can say that Shakespeare, like any parent, had to find a way to carry his child's memory. And in a culture where personal confession wasn't publicly encouraged, art becomes one of the places where that grief could be transformed into something speakable. In Hamlet, the play, the prince's grief is technically about a father, not a child, but listen to the language. The obsession with what is remembered, what is forgotten, the fear that the dead will fade if their story is not told. When Hamlet holds Yorick's skull and says, "Alas, poor Yorick, I knew him," he's doing something very familiar. He's trying to make a dead person present again through the story. He lists the jokes, the games, the moments they shared. It's a scene about a jester, but it feels like something any grieving parent, partner, or friend might do, replaying memories to keep someone alive in the mind. Hamnet, the film, imagines Agnes and William standing at the beginning of that process. Agnes' grief is embodied. She sees visions. She feels Hamnet's presence in the natural world. William's grief, by contrast, gradually comes forward through language, toward the stage, toward performance. And that's really at the heart of the story. Grief does not disappear. It changes form. For Agnes, it becomes ritual and memory. For William, it becomes tragedy and poetry. For us, centuries later, it becomes a film and a novel. Each layer is another attempt to carry a loss that was once utterly private. Now, I've spent a lot of my life around stories, in classrooms, on stages, and now here with you. And one thing I've learned is that the stories that stay with us are almost always about something someone has lost. Maybe you can think of a book, play, even a film that found you at the right moment when you were grieving a person or a place or a vision of your life that was gone. It didn't fix anything, but it gave your feeling shape. It reminded you that someone else somewhere had felt something like this. That's what Hamnet is doing with Shakespeare's grief. It's not claiming to show us exactly what happened in 1596. It's saying, here is one way a family might have carried this loss. Here is how that private pain might echo into public art. And in watching it, we're invited to think about the stories that help us carry our own lives forward. In telling Agnes' story, Hamnet reminds us that behind every great work of art is a human being trying to survive something that could have broken them. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Has a particular story, film, piece of music, or ritual helped you process grief? If you're comfortable sharing, add it to the comments. You never know who might need that recommendation. And if explorations like this, where history, art, and our own lives intersect, if that's meaningful to you, you're welcome to join me here on the channel. Because the stories we carry from the past shape the way we live in the present. Until next time, safe journeys.